Escapism has become so prevalent that at this point, anything can become an addiction. When I was at my last two jobs, both of the ones that I worked over the last 4 years, when they got bad, all I could do was talk about them, talk about how much they sucked, and then go escape from the problem. And what's really interesting, obviously, I've said this before, but a lot of why I had trouble doing anything about it was because of the ADHD that I was having. I was having very, very severe ADHD issues at the time. But in addition to that, I knew what was wrong. I knew what was wrong within myself, but I didn't know what to do about it, right? And there are times where we'll escape in life, not just because something's wrong, but it's because we know what we need to do, but we don't know if we can do it with it, if we have, it within ourselves to do what we need to do, or sometimes more importantly, we know what we need to do, but we can't do it. We either there's like a constraint on us that prevents us from doing what we need to do, and so we escape. And then we escape into something, we disappear, and we never actually solve the root problem. Because of the catastrophe that would involve. And it's like escaping would be better than actually fixing the problem. And what's really challenging is that there are times in life where, unfortunately, maybe that is, for a short period of time, the solution. I mean, I'm not going to say for a second that during the pandemic, this was a good example, but like during the pandemic, you could give me all the facts, logic, and reason behind why it was dangerous at the time. And I recently just saw a video of somebody talking about how bad it was when it was happening. And it's just kind of like, while that's going on, like I could sit there and live in the fact of it, or I could go escape and I could go turn everything off and just walk away and just go on a walk and not think about it, right? There are actually times when escaping from the reality is actually healthy for us if the reality is really dark and grim. But and we can't do anything about it. There are actually times where that can be appropriate, but there's also times where it's not appropriate. And we actually can do something about it. We have the ability to impact the problems that are hitting us and affecting us, but we're just either too nervous, too scared, too shy. We just don't have the evidence to suggest that it's going to work, and so we just run away. And I cannot express how badly I used to do this. When I was in college, I was introduced to this little indie game from this small indie company called League of Legends. I don't know if you've heard of it. And some other time I'll have a video just talking about that, because that's its own thing, and I really want to talk about it when I'm ready. I'm just not there yet. But this game is one of the most addictive and fun and miserable games I've ever played. I think it's the only game I basically played for around 7 years, and I finally think I've at least cut it out. I haven't played it in months because I have been doing other things. I've stopped escaping. But what I actually started to realize about this game years in is that this is a game, when I want to escape, my brain tells me, go play this game, because it forces such a level of focus that everything else shuts off. And if my brain doesn't want to think about something going on around me, it just goes, I don't want to think about that. Go do this thing, right? And there are times where people will escape to other things that are sometimes healthy. So sometimes it's actually really healthy to go escape to the gym if for a period of time, right? It's like, today sucks. I'm really stressed out. I'm frustrated. I had a bad day at work. I'm going to the gym. Awesome. Healthy. Don't hurt yourself. Come home, go to sleep, or whatever. Some people will escape to work, and sometimes there are healthy ways to do that too. But like I said, the challenge with escapism is we have such an easy access to it now that it makes it extremely, extremely easy for us to avoid solving our own problems. And then what we do is we bury a life on top of we will put something under a rug, and then we will not touch it, and then we will put, in this sort of metaphorical instance, we will bury it under a rug, and then we'll put furniture on it, we'll put a sofa on it, we'll invite 10 friends over, and we'll pretend it doesn't exist for years. And then the longer that goes on, we know it's there and it stresses us out, but we're just not going to talk about it or think about it. And so we're just going to live a whole life with that thing never getting addressed. And the reality is that thing never actually went away. It's still there. And when we're 20 years old and that happens, it's like, oh, well, I don't worry about it. But when we're 30 and 40 and 50 and 60, and we built a whole life on top of something that never happened or never got resolved, and we spent our whole life escaping from it, it becomes very, very, very hard to address that just emotionally And spiritually, logically, practically, relationally, it gets very hard to address that when we hit later points in our life, because we've built a life on top of the escaping from that thing, right? Because it's just integrated into our behavior and into our lifestyle, right? And so the thing that I was escaping from at both of the jobs that I was working at was the fact that not only were they having trouble paying me during the period of time that I was working, right? Like I wasn't being paid enough to live for a variety of reasons that were actually not just involving the economy. Because back at the time, the economy wasn't as bad as it is now, because it was a couple of years ago. But more importantly, the I felt like I was supposed to be doing it on my own. Like I felt like it was on me, and I was like, I could just go do this for myself. I'll give you a fantastic example, because I'm pretty big into business, but I don't say it all the time. As an example, I used to be a real estate photographer. And by the time I got good at this job, they, as a contractor, they sent me to like many, many $1 million houses. I mean, I probably shot 400 or 500 million separate $1 million house, over $1 million houses, right? Well, I remember one of the last houses I shot before I finally threw in the towel and quit. Is I did a house for, I went into a house and did a video, and this house was $1 million, at least $1 million, and I knew that when that house sold, the realtor would be getting a cut anywhere between 3 and 6%, which is around $30,000 to $60,000. $30,000 to $60,000. Now, there are a lot of costs that go into that. So they don't actually see that full amount of money. They see anywhere from that, they have to pay taxes, they have to pay for costs that go into actually selling and marketing the house. So they don't actually get that full amount, but they get a lot of money out of that $1 million sale, right? At least like $4,000 to $6,000 is a very reasonable amount to assume that, right? Probably higher than that. Well, I was paid barely 0.1% of the value of that house. So to go shoot this house, like I was to go get the video of this house, I was paid like $30. And I knew that this realtor was going to get like just the net cost, just the gross cost of what this realtor was going to get was going to be $30,000, and I was getting paid $30. This realtor, I just couldn't live with that. I couldn't live with myself. And the numbers aren't perfect in there, like I said, but I could not live with the fact that I was making such a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what I would make if I was doing it on my own, as opposed to doing it for this company that was getting like 80% of the money for what I was doing. I was like, if I was doing this on my own, I wouldn't be getting no $30 to go do this. I'd be getting way more. And over time, I couldn't deal with that, and I couldn't cope with the fact that if I was doing it on my own, because I couldn't because of contractual reasons, but I also couldn't because I didn't believe in myself. I was too scared. I was too anxious. I didn't think I could do it, right? And so, like, I just escaped. I would just escape. I just left. I would just be like, I can't do this. I'm not going to think about it. I don't want to worry about it, vice versa, right? And so because of that, I would escape. And then, like I said, I started another job, which was in IT at a private organization about a year ago. Did that for about a year. And again, the whole time I was doing it, I was like, these guys aren't paying me enough to live. They're not having a conversation with me. They're avoiding the problem. They're not making me more valuable. They don't want to make me more valuable. And I couldn't deal with the fact that if I was on my own doing it, then I knew that I knew I would at least not have to rely on other people putting ceilings on me. You know what I'm saying? And so I would escape. So that whole time that was happening from 2020 to 2024, in the beginning of the year, I would just go play League of Legends, and I would just go escape, because I just couldn't cope with the fact that that was happening. And so eventually, at a certain point in my life, probably about 6 months ago, I decided enough was enough, and I just decided I was going to quit and just go out on my own. And then magically, escaping wasn't something to worry about anymore, because I'm actually worrying about the problems that arise with choosing to address the issue. See? And so it's a real I'm fortunate to be able to do that, but very often we aren't able to do such extreme things like just leave a job, quit, uproot, go do this thing. It's we can do that when we're younger often, but not when we're older. We have 3 kids and 2 dogs and a white picket fence. It's a lot harder. But it's something to consider, that like no amount of escaping from something is ever going to cause it to go away. It's always going to be there. And especially with the advent of how easy it is to escape with technology and the internet nowadays, like, I'll just tell you, it's not worth it. It's not worth the pain and suffering that's going to be involved with perpetually escaping that thing for the rest of your life. Like, I just think that life is so much more meaningful when we're doing the thing that we actually want to be doing and pursuing the thing we want to be pursuing. I'm not saying we have control over the outcome, but it's not about the outcome. It's about being on that path and that path being worth pursuing.